People often ask me what the loneliest place in the world feels like. Most imagine an empty island somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Others picture an abandoned house where no one has lived for years. They're all wrong. The loneliest place I have ever known was standing in my own hallway after returning home from a business trip, realizing I no longer understood what was happening inside the house I had worked so hard to provide. My name is Michael Turner. I'm 48 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was doing everything a good husband and father was supposed to do. I worked. I traveled. I earned a good living. Every business trip I accepted had exactly the same purpose: giving my family a better life. At least, that's what I kept telling myself every time I kissed my wife goodbye before heading to another airport. Sometimes I was gone for 3 days, sometimes a week. Every now and then, almost 2. Whenever my wife asked if I could slow down, I always gave her the same answer: just a few more years. I wanted my children to have opportunities I never had growing up. A good school, a safe neighborhood, college without student loans, vacations we could actually afford. Everything I did was for them, or at least that's what I believed. 3 months ago, I left for what should have been another routine 5-day business trip to Seattle. The meetings were exhausting. The flights were delayed. By the time my plane finally landed back home, it was almost 11:30 at night. I texted my wife while waiting for my suitcase. Is greater than, "Don't stay awake. I'll be home soon." She replied almost immediately, "Is greater than drive safely. We'll see you in the morning." I smiled. That simple little heart somehow made every delayed flight feel worthwhile. After picking up my rental car from long-term parking, I drove through nearly empty streets toward home. The neighborhood was completely silent. Every porch light had already been turned off. Only the occasional street lamp broke the darkness stretching across the quiet suburban road. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I noticed something unusual. The entire house was dark. Not a single light remained on. I wasn't surprised. It was almost midnight. My wife usually went to bed before 10 whenever I was away. The kids had school in the morning. Everything looked perfectly normal. I quietly unlocked the front door, careful not to wake anyone. The familiar smell of laundry detergent and cinnamon candles greeted me the moment I stepped inside. Home. There is no hotel in the world capable of replacing that feeling. I quietly placed my suitcase beside the staircase before removing my shoes. That's when I heard it. A low humming sound. At first I thought it was the dishwasher. Then I realized it wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from downstairs. Our laundry room. I frowned. Why would anyone be doing laundry at midnight? Maybe my wife had forgotten to switch the clothes into the dryer before going to bed. That seemed reasonable enough. Still, something didn't feel right. The washing machine wasn't the only sound. There was movement. Very slow movement. Almost like someone carefully trying not to make any noise. I walked quietly toward the basement stairs. Each step creaked beneath my weight despite how carefully I tried to move. The humming grew louder. Halfway down the stairs, I saw it. A faint strip of light escaping beneath the laundry room door. My heart immediately began beating a little faster. Every parent understands that feeling. The moment something ordinary suddenly becomes just unusual enough to make your imagination race. Had someone broken into the house? Was my wife all right? I reached the bottom step without making another sound. The laundry room door stood slightly open, just enough for me to see inside. Then I froze. Standing beside the washing machine was my 12-year-old son. He wasn't wearing pajamas. He still had on yesterday's jeans and an oversized gray sweatshirt. His sleeves were rolled almost to his elbows. Soap covered both of his hands. He carefully lifted soaking wet clothes from the washing machine before placing them inside the dryer. His movements weren't clumsy. They were practiced, almost automatic, like someone who had done this many times before. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Why wasn't he asleep? Why was he doing laundry? And more importantly, why did he look so afraid every time he glanced toward the basement door? Without thinking, I quietly whispered his name. "Ethan." The basket slipped from his hands. He spun around so quickly that several wet shirts fell onto the floor. His face turned completely pale. "Dad?" He looked terrified. Not surprised. Terrified. For several long seconds, neither of us said another word. Then, before I could ask a single question, my son hurriedly stepped in front of the laundry basket as though trying to hide whatever was inside it. At that exact moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My son wasn't simply doing laundry. He was hiding something. For several seconds, neither of us moved. My son simply stood there in front of the laundry basket, breathing so hard I could hear it over the hum of the dryer. His hands were still covered with soap. Water dripped from the sleeves of his sweatshirt onto the concrete floor. "Ethan," I said gently, trying not to frighten him, "what are you doing?" He swallowed. I couldn't sleep." I smiled softly. "So you decided to do laundry?" He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes darted toward the basket behind him. That tiny movement told me everything. Whatever was inside that basket mattered. More than anything else at that moment. "It's almost midnight, buddy." "I know. You have school tomorrow." "I know." His answers came quickly, almost automatically, like someone who had repeated them many times before. I slowly walked another step closer. He immediately stepped backward. It wasn't a dramatic movement, just enough to keep himself between me and the basket. That was when my heart began pounding. Not because I thought he had done something wrong, because I had never seen my son afraid of me before. "Ethan, it's okay, Dad." His voice cracked. "I've almost finished." "Almost finished?" "Finished what?" I looked around the room. There were 2 empty detergent bottles sitting beside the washing machine, a drying rack full of children's clothes, 3 neatly folded towels. Everything looked organized. Too organized. This wasn't a child randomly trying to use the washing machine. This looked like someone following a routine. "How long have you been awake?" He hesitated. "I don't know." "What time did you come downstairs?" Another pause. "A little after 10. My stomach tightened. He had been down here nearly 2 hours. "Alone." "What happened to Mom?" "She's sleeping." "Is she okay?" He nodded immediately. "Yeah." "Then why didn't she do this tomorrow?" Again. Silence. Children often think silence hides the truth. Parents usually hear the truth inside the silence itself. I looked at the washing machine, then the dryer, then the folded clothes. Finally, my eyes landed on Ethan's hands. The skin across his fingers looked rough, dry, almost cracked. That wasn't from one night of doing laundry. That happened after weeks, maybe months. "Ethan." This time my voice became softer. "When was the first time you did this?" His eyes immediately filled with tears. "I don't remember." That answer frightened me more than anything else he had said. Children remember their first bicycle, their first baseball game, their first day of school. They should remember the first time they secretly did laundry at midnight. Unless it had become completely normal. I slowly sat down on the small wooden chair beside the washing machine. "I'm not angry." "I know." "Then why are you scared?" For a long moment, he stared at the floor. Finally, barely above a whisper, he answered, "Because you're not supposed to see me." Those words stopped my heart. "What do you mean?" He looked toward the basement stairs, then back at me. "Dad." "Yeah? You always come home during the day." "I know. I thought I'd finish before you got here." "Finish what?" What exactly was my 12-year-old son trying so desperately to hide from me? I looked toward the laundry basket again. Several pieces of clothing were sticking out from underneath the towel lying across the top. Tiny shirts, tiny socks, my daughter's clothes. Then I noticed something else. Every single piece belonged to someone else. Nothing inside that basket belonged to Ethan. Not one shirt, not one pair of jeans, not one sock. Confused, I looked back toward him. "Where are your clothes?" He blinked. "They're already clean." "What?" "I washed mine yesterday." "You washed them?" He nodded. "I always wash mine first. Always." There was that word again. Always. Not tonight. Not sometimes. Always. My mind raced through every business trip I had taken over the last year. Every conference. Every delayed flight. Every hotel room. How many nights had this happened while I believed my family was sleeping peacefully? I suddenly realized I had absolutely no idea what life inside my own home looked like whenever I wasn't there. I thought I did. I was wrong. Very wrong. Then Ethan quietly knelt beside the basket and picked up one of the little sweaters that had fallen onto the floor. He folded it perfectly. The movements were smooth, fast, practiced. A 12-year-old shouldn't know how to fold laundry like that. Not unless he had done it hundreds of times. I felt something inside my chest begin to break. Not because my son was doing laundry, because he had become so good at it. Parents often celebrate the day their children learn new skills. That night, watching my son fold tiny shirts with the confidence of an exhausted adult felt nothing like a celebration. It felt like I had missed something incredibly important, something I should have seen months ago. Then he quietly said something I will never forget. "I promise I'll finish before Mom wakes up." I looked at him in complete confusion. "Why does that matter?" He smiled. Not the smile of a child. The smile of someone carrying responsibilities much too heavy for his age, because she needs to rest. At that moment, I stopped wondering why my son was doing laundry. I started wondering what had happened inside my family while I was busy building the life I thought they needed. I didn't sleep that night. Even after Ethan finished folding every piece of clothing and quietly returned upstairs, I remained sitting alone in the laundry room long after the washing machine stopped humming. The silence felt different now, heavier, almost accusing. For years, I believed I knew every corner of this house, every habit, every routine, every little tradition that made our family ours. Yet somehow, my 12-year-old son had been spending hours in this room without me knowing. How does a father miss something like that? I kept asking myself the same question over and over. The only answer I could find was one I didn't want to accept, because I wasn't here. The next morning, I woke earlier than everyone else. Normally, after a late flight, I would have slept until at least 9. Not this time. At 6:30, I quietly walked into the kitchen. The coffee machine had already been turned on. That surprised me. Emily, my wife, never woke before 7 unless she absolutely had to. As I reached for a mug, I heard footsteps behind me. It wasn't Emily. It was Ethan. He stopped the moment he saw me. "Dad." "Morning." He looked nervous again. "You're up early." "So are you." He forced a small smile before walking directly toward the refrigerator. Without saying a word, he took out eggs, milk, bread. Then he began making breakfast. I leaned against the kitchen counter, pretending to scroll through emails on my phone while secretly watching him. His movements were quick, confident. He cracked eggs without breaking the yolks, started the pan, placed bread into the toaster, then quietly poured orange juice into 3 glasses. Not 4, 3. One for himself, one for his little sister, one for Emily. I frowned. "What about mine?" He looked surprised. "Oh, I didn't know you'd be awake." Those words stayed with me. He didn't forget me. He simply wasn't expecting me to be home. This wasn't my routine. It was his. A few minutes later, Emily walked downstairs looking exhausted. There were dark circles beneath her eyes I somehow hadn't noticed before. She smiled warmly the moment she saw me. "You're home." "I am." She kissed my cheek before looking toward Ethan. "Sweetheart, you didn't have to cook." He shrugged. "It's okay." She smiled gratefully. "Thank you." The exchange lasted barely 5 seconds. Yet something about it bothered me. It felt normal, far too normal. Almost like this happened every morning. After breakfast, Emily drove our daughter to elementary school while Ethan waited for the school bus. The moment the front door closed behind him, I turned toward my wife. "Can I ask you something?" She smiled. "Of course." "When did Ethan start doing laundry?" Her smile disappeared. "What?" "I saw him last night." For several seconds, she simply stared at me. Then she slowly sat down. "You weren't supposed to see that." Those 6 words sent a chill through my entire body. "What do you mean I wasn't supposed to?" She sighed deeply. "I wanted to tell you. When? A dozen times." "Then why didn't you?" She looked away. "Because every time I tried," she stopped speaking. "Every time you tried what?" "You were leaving for another trip." Her answer hit me harder than I expected. "I didn't want to distract you. Emily, you already carried enough pressure." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So instead, I looked toward the laundry room. Our 12-year-old son carried it. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "I never asked him to." "I know. He just..." She wiped her face before continuing. "Started helping." "Helping?" "At first it was little things." "What little things?" "Packing his sister's lunch, making breakfast, folding towels, cleaning the kitchen." She smiled sadly. "Then one day I came home from work and all the laundry was finished. I couldn't say a word. I thought he did it once." She laughed quietly through her tears. "I didn't realize he'd been doing it every week." Every week. Those words echoed inside my mind. Every week, while I sat inside hotel conference rooms, my son quietly became another adult inside this house. "Why didn't you stop him?" "I tried." "And?" She smiled in a way that immediately broke my heart. "He told me I looked too tired." Silence. The kind of silence that hurts. I didn't know what to do. She lowered her eyes. I was exhausted. There was no anger inside her voice, only guilt. The same guilt beginning to grow inside me. Then she quietly whispered something that changed everything. "Ethan thinks he's the man of the house whenever you're gone." I felt my chest tighten. No, he wasn't pretending. He believed it. And somehow, without realizing it, I had taught him exactly that. By leaving. Again. And again. And again. I always believed I was providing for my family. I never stopped to ask what my absence was costing them. That afternoon, after Emily left for work, I quietly walked into Ethan's bedroom. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for answers. Instead, I found something that would change everything I believed about my own son. I stood quietly inside Ethan's bedroom for several moments before taking another step. His room looked exactly the way I remembered it. Baseball trophies lined the bookshelf. Comic books were stacked beside his bed. A half-finished science project sat on his desk. At first glance, it looked like the room of any ordinary 12-year-old boy. Then I noticed something that didn't belong. A small spiral notebook rested neatly beside his alarm clock. Its cover had been folded so many times the edges were beginning to tear. Across the front, written carefully in black marker, were 4 simple words. House things to remember. Curious, I slowly opened it. The very first page made my stomach tighten. Monday. Wake up 6. Make breakfast. Pack Lily's lunch. Put uniforms in dryer. Check mom's medicine. I frowned. Medicine. I turned the page. Tuesday. Fold towels. Vacuum living room. Call grandma if mom is late. Wednesday. Wash school clothes. Start dishwasher. Make sure Lily finishes homework. Every page looked the same. Lists. Schedules. Reminders. None of them looked like something written by a child. They looked like notes left by an exhausted parent trying desperately not to forget important responsibilities. My hands actually began trembling. Then I reached the last few pages. There, the handwriting suddenly changed. Instead of lists, there were thoughts. Little sentences. The first one was dated almost 6 months earlier. Is greater than mom looked really tired today. Is greater than don't let her carry the laundry basket anymore. I swallowed hard. The next page. Is greater than dad said he'll be home Friday. Is greater than Lily keeps asking when Friday is. Another. Is greater than mom smiled today. Is greater than I think she smiled because I finished the dishes before she got home. I closed my eyes. Children shouldn't measure happiness this way. Then I reached one final page. This one wasn't dated. It simply read, is greater than, when dad comes home, don't tell him. Is greater than he already works too hard. For several long moments, I couldn't breathe. There it was. The sentence that explained everything. He wasn't hiding this because he wanted praise. He wasn't pretending to be responsible. He genuinely believed he was protecting me. Just as I believed I was protecting him, we had both spent months trying to carry burdens the other person was never supposed to bear. The sound of the front door opening downstairs suddenly pulled me back to reality. I quickly placed the notebook exactly where I had found it. Moments later, Ethan came running upstairs. Dad, I'm in here. He stopped in the doorway. You found my notebook. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Those words caught me completely off guard. Why are you apologizing? I wasn't supposed to write all that. Ethan. He looked down at the floor. I know kids aren't supposed to worry about grown-up stuff. My heart shattered. Who had taught him that? Certainly not me. Or maybe, exactly me. Because children rarely learn from what we say. They learn from what we do. I slowly walked toward him. When did you start worrying about grown-up things? He thought about the question for a long moment. I don't know. Today. Finally, he whispered. The night mom cried. Every muscle in my body went completely still. What? He looked embarrassed. She didn't know I saw her. When? The night you missed Lily's birthday. I closed my eyes. I remembered that trip. A client meeting had been moved. Flights were canceled. I had called to apologize. Emily told me everything was fine. Apparently, it wasn't. Mom thought we were asleep. He smiled sadly. But I heard her. What happened? She was sitting in the kitchen. His voice became quieter. She kept looking at the birthday cake. I couldn't move. Then she said. He hesitated. What did she say? He looked directly into my eyes. I wish he didn't have to miss so much. The room suddenly felt too small. Too quiet, too heavy. I didn't want her to cry anymore. Those words, spoken so simply, broke something inside me. So I started helping. You were trying to make her happy. He nodded. If I did enough stuff, another pause. Maybe she'd smile more. No father is prepared for the moment he realizes his child has quietly been trying to fix problems that belong to adults. I wrapped my arms around him without saying another word. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then he quietly whispered, I didn't do a very good job. I pulled back just enough to look him in the eyes. No. He looked frightened. You did far too good of a job. Confused, he stared at me. This was never your responsibility. I know. No. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. I don't think you do. Because somewhere, without either of us realizing it, my little boy had stopped being just a child. And I was beginning to understand exactly who was responsible for that. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't Emily. It was me. I spent the rest of that afternoon sitting alone on the back porch. The notebook rested beside me. I had probably read every page 20 times already. Each time, I discovered another sentence that somehow hurt more than the last. Children don't usually keep journals about cartoons or video games because those things are ordinary. They write about the things they don't know how to carry. My son had been carrying our family, and I never noticed. Around 5 o'clock, Emily returned home from work. The moment she stepped out of her car, I walked toward her. We need to talk. One look at my face, and she immediately knew something had happened. You found it. The notebook. She nodded slowly. I always wondered what he'd written in there. You never read it? She shook her head. It wasn't mine. There was something beautiful about that answer. She respected his privacy. I wasn't sure I deserved the same privilege anymore. We sat together at the kitchen table while I quietly placed the notebook between us. I think we both missed something. Emily looked down at the pages. No. What? I think we were both trying to survive. That answer stayed with me. Survive. Not live. Not enjoy. Simply survive. When did life become so difficult? I asked quietly. She smiled sadly. I don't think it happened all at once. No? It happened one business trip at a time. There wasn't an ounce of blame in her voice. Only exhaustion. I never wanted this. I know. I thought I was helping. You were. She reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. You were helping financially. Then she looked toward the hallway where Ethan and Lily were laughing together. But families need more than money. I lowered my head. I know. No. She smiled gently. I think you're only just beginning to know. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me all day. How many trips did I take last year? Emily thought for a moment. 43. 43. 43 times I packed a suitcase. 43 times I promised I'd make it up to everyone when I came home. 43 times my son quietly stepped into my place. I suddenly understood why he folded laundry like an adult. Why he made breakfast without thinking. Why he checked his mother's medicine every night. Because he wasn't pretending to help. He had replaced me. That realization nearly crushed me. I don't know how to fix this. Emily smiled. You don't have to fix everything. What do I do then? Come home. I am home. She gently shook her head. No. She pointed toward my phone lying on the kitchen counter. You've been answering work emails since I walked in. I looked at the screen. 7 unread emails. 3 missed calls. A meeting invitation. Without saying another word, I turned the phone off completely. Emily stared at me. What? I'll deal with it tomorrow. She smiled. I haven't heard you say that in years. At that exact moment, Ethan walked into the kitchen carrying another basket of laundry. The moment he saw me, he froze. Almost automatically, he tried hiding the basket behind his back. No. He looked confused. No what? I walked over and gently took the basket from his hands. You don't have to do this anymore. He looked genuinely worried. But the uniforms, I'll wash them. The towels, I'll fold them. What about? I've got it. For several seconds, he simply stared at me, almost like he didn't believe me. Then he quietly asked something that completely broke my heart. Are you staying? Not. Are you helping? Not. Are you mad? Just. Are you staying? I smiled. Yes. For how long? As long as my family needs me. He looked down at the floor. But don't you have another trip next week? I didn't answer immediately, because I honestly didn't know. My calendar certainly said I did. But suddenly, it didn't seem nearly as important. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I opened my laptop. There was an email already waiting for my boss. Is greater than flight confirmed. Is greater than Chicago. Is greater than Monday morning. I stared at it for a long time, almost 5 minutes. Then I opened a blank message. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For 15 years, I had never once declined a business trip. Not one. Tonight, everything felt different. Slowly, I began to type. I stared at the email for nearly 10 minutes before finally pressing send. My resignation wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It contained only 3 short paragraphs. I thanked the company for every opportunity they had given me. I explained that my priorities had changed. Then I wrote one sentence that somehow felt heavier than everything else. Is greater than my family has needed me for a long time, and I'm finally ready to come home. After pressing the button, I expected to feel terrified. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. The following morning, my phone started ringing before 7 o'clock. The screen displayed my manager's name. I already knew why he was calling. Michael. Morning, David. I just read your email. I figured, can we talk? Of course. For the next 20 minutes, he did everything he could to convince me to stay. A promotion, a higher salary, fewer trips, a larger team. It was more money than I had ever imagined earning. A year earlier, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. Now, I looked out the kitchen window. Ethan was teaching Lily how to ride her bicycle before school. She laughed every time she almost lost her balance. He never stopped encouraging her. Again, you've got it. I'm right here. Those 3 words echoed inside my heart. I'm right here. Exactly where I hadn't been for far too long. Michael, David's voice pulled me back. Are you still there? I am. So, what do you think? I smiled quietly. I think I've already spent enough years missing moments I'll never get back. Silence. Then he sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. I've appreciated everything this company has given me. I know. But there isn't a promotion in the world worth missing another birthday. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, he laughed softly. You know. What? I've got 2 kids myself. I know. I haven't been to one of my daughter's piano recitals in almost 3 years. His voice suddenly sounded tired. Much older than it had only moments earlier. I told myself I'd make it to the next one. I smiled sadly. There will always be another meeting. He laughed quietly. But not another childhood. Exactly. Before hanging up, he surprised me. You've just reminded me of something I should have remembered a long time ago. What? My family doesn't need a better provider. He paused. They need their dad. After ending the call, I walked outside. The morning air felt cooler than usual. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I was simply noticing things I'd ignored for years. Dad. Lily came running across the yard the moment she saw me. Watch. She climbed onto her bicycle, pedaled 3 times, then almost immediately tipped sideways into the grass. Instead of crying, she burst into laughter. Dad. Esau. I almost did it. You absolutely did. She grinned proudly. Then Ethan walked over carrying the bicycle upright. Can you help her again? I looked at him. You've been teaching her? He shrugged. Somebody had to. Somebody had to. I smiled. Not anymore. He looked confused. What do you mean? I took the bicycle from his hands. I'll teach her. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching, almost uncertain about what to do with himself. Then I gently placed my arm around his shoulder. Actually, what? How about you teach both of us? That was the first time in months I heard my son laugh like an actual 12-year-old. Not the careful laugh of a child trying to make life easier for everyone else. A real laugh. Carefree. Loud. Exactly the way childhood should sound. For nearly 2 hours, we stayed in that front yard. No phones. No emails. No conference calls. Just scraped knees, crooked bicycle turns, and laughter echoing across the neighborhood. Later that afternoon, while Ethan was finishing his homework, I quietly carried the old laundry basket downstairs. Every shirt, every towel, every tiny sock. I washed them myself. Halfway through folding everything, I suddenly realized something. I wasn't doing laundry. I was reclaiming fatherhood, one ordinary shirt at a time. That evening, Ethan came downstairs looking surprised. Dad? Yeah? You forgot to separate the white clothes. I laughed. I guess you'll have to teach me. He smiled. I can do that. No. I folded another towel before looking at him. You can help me. There is a huge difference. Children shouldn't carry families. Families carry one another. Standing together in that laundry room, folding clothes side by side, I quietly realized this wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of a completely different one. A story where my son no longer had to become the man of the house. Because his father had finally come home. Over the next several weeks, our house slowly began to feel different. Not because we bought new furniture. Not because anything expensive changed. The difference was much quieter than that. Every morning, I made breakfast. Not because Ethan couldn't. Because he no longer had to. The first Monday after leaving my job, I walked him to the school bus. Halfway there, he kept glancing at me as though he expected me to suddenly remember another flight, another meeting, another airport. You okay? I asked. He nodded. You sure? After another few steps, he finally admitted the truth. I keep forgetting you're actually here. Those words hurt, not because he meant them to, because they were true. Children eventually stop expecting the things that disappoint them often enough. I had unknowingly taught my son not to expect me. That lesson would take time to erase. When the bus arrived, he climbed the steps before suddenly turning back around. Dad? Yeah? You'll still be here when I get home? I smiled. I promise. He stared at me for another second. Then he smiled back. A genuine smile, the kind that reaches a child's eyes. That afternoon, I was waiting in the driveway before the school bus even stopped. The moment Ethan stepped off, he looked directly toward the house, then toward me. His smile appeared immediately. You came. I told you I would. I know. But he hesitated. I still checked. That broke my heart all over again. Trust isn't rebuilt with one promise. It's rebuilt with hundreds of kept promises. Day after day, week after week, month after month. I intended to keep every one of them. One evening, nearly 6 weeks later, Emily and I found ourselves sitting quietly on the back porch after the kids had gone to bed. I haven't seen him do laundry once, she said softly. I smiled. He still tries. What? I catch him sneaking downstairs every few days. She laughed quietly. What does he say? The same thing every time. What? I was just checking if you needed help. We both laughed. Then she grew quiet. I miss this. What? This version of you. I looked toward her. I didn't know he was disappearing. You didn't. She gently rested her head against my shoulder. You thought you were giving us everything. I wasn't. She smiled. You were. Confused, I looked at her. You gave us security, but I forgot about time. She nodded slowly. Yes. Then she took my hand. But you're here now. There are moments in marriage when forgiveness doesn't arrive through speeches. It arrives through ordinary evenings exactly like that one. No dramatic declarations. No grand apology. Just two people quietly deciding they still want to grow old together. A few days later, I received an unexpected package in the mail. It was from my former office. Inside was a framed photograph taken during our last annual company conference. Nearly 50 employees stood smiling together. I found myself almost laughing. Looking at that picture now, I couldn't remember a single presentation we had attended. I couldn't remember what awards we won. I couldn't even remember what hotel we stayed in. Then I looked toward the family picture sitting beside it. That one. I remembered everything. The day. The weather. The joke Ethan told right before the camera clicked. The way Lily refused to stop making funny faces. Funny how memory works. We remember the people, not the meetings. That night, I quietly carried the office photograph into the garage before hanging it on a shelf beside several old boxes. Then I placed the family picture in its place above my desk. Emily noticed immediately. I like that better. So do I. A week later, while cleaning the garage, Ethan found an old suitcase I hadn't used since resigning. Dad? Yeah? Are you keeping this? I looked at it for several moments. That suitcase had traveled hundreds of thousands of miles. Chicago, Seattle, Denver, Boston, Atlanta. More hotel rooms than I could possibly count. It represented 15 years of believing success always waited somewhere else. I smiled before answering. No. What should we do with it? I thought for a moment, then I shrugged. Maybe donate it. He laughed. What if you need it again someday? I looked directly at him before giving the only answer that mattered. If I ever have to choose between another trip and another evening with my family, I smiled. I already know which one I'm taking. For the first time since I returned home that night, I noticed something remarkable. Ethan no longer looked relieved. He simply believed me. And perhaps that was the greatest promotion I had ever earned. About 3 months after I resigned, life finally settled into something that felt wonderfully ordinary. Every morning, I drove Ethan and Lily to school. Every afternoon, we worked on homework together around the kitchen table. Every evening, our family ate dinner before anyone touched a phone or turned on the television. If someone had told me a year earlier that this simple routine would become the greatest luxury of my life, I probably would have laughed. Now I knew better. Extraordinary lives are usually built from very ordinary days. One Friday afternoon, Ethan walked through the front door carrying a folded piece of paper. Dad? Yeah? He looked unusually nervous. I need your signature. I smiled. Homework? He shook his head. It's for school. I unfolded the paper. At the top were 4 words. Father-Son Activity Day. The school was hosting a Saturday event where fathers and sons would spend the day building birdhouses together. For several seconds, I simply stared at the form. Then something caught my attention. At the bottom, next to the question asking who would attend, someone had erased a name. Several times. The paper was almost torn where the pencil had rubbed against it. Ethan. Yeah? Why is this erased? He immediately looked embarrassed. I wasn't sure. About what? If you'd be here. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Even after months of coming home every day, a part of him still wasn't completely certain. I almost didn't bring it home. What? I thought maybe you were busy. I quietly folded the paper again. Then I looked him directly in the eyes. I don't care what I'm doing. If you ask me to be somewhere with you, I smiled. I'm already there. His face immediately lit up. So you'll come? I wouldn't miss it for anything. The following Saturday morning, we arrived at school 30 minutes early. Parents and children filled the gymnasium. Some families painted birdhouses. Others built wooden toy cars. Laughter echoed through every corner of the room. As Ethan and I worked together, I noticed something that made me smile. He kept introducing me to everyone. This is my dad. Not my father. Not my dad who's home this weekend. Just me dad. It was such a simple sentence. Yet somehow, it meant everything. Around lunchtime, one of the teachers walked over carrying a camera. Can I take a picture? Of course. She positioned us beside the birdhouse we'd just finished painting. Ethan, she smiled, put your arm around your dad. Without hesitation, he did. The camera clicked. Then she asked one final question. What should I write under the picture for the yearbook? Before I could answer, Ethan smiled. My best friend. The room suddenly disappeared. The conversations, the laughter, the sounds of children playing, everything faded except those 3 words. My best friend. I don't think any promotion I ever received, any award, any paycheck, could ever compare to hearing my son describe me that way. On the drive home, he couldn't stop talking about the event. Dad, yeah? We should build a real birdhouse in our backyard. I think that's a great idea. And maybe a treehouse someday. That sounds even better. And he grinned. Maybe we could go camping too. I laughed. I think we have plenty of time. That evening, while cleaning sawdust from the garage floor, I noticed the old spiral notebook sitting quietly on the shelf. The same notebook that had once contained endless lists of responsibilities. Curious, I opened it again. This time, there was a new page. The handwriting was exactly the same. Only the words had changed. Is greater than Saturday. Is greater than built a birdhouse with Dad. Is greater than best day ever. I closed the notebook almost immediately, not because I didn't want to read anymore, because I couldn't see through the tears. Children don't remember the things we buy them nearly as long as they remember the moments we give them. That simple birdhouse probably wouldn't survive 5 winters. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The memory would. Forever. Summer arrived more quickly than any of us expected. By then, our new routine no longer felt new. It simply felt like life. The kind of life I had unknowingly been searching for all along. One Saturday morning, I woke before everyone else and quietly stepped into the backyard with a cup of coffee. The birdhouse Ethan and I had built together hung proudly from the old maple tree near the fence. It wasn't perfect. One side leaned slightly lower than the other. The paint had already begun fading after several weeks of rain. Most people probably wouldn't have looked at it twice. To me, it was the most beautiful thing in our yard. A tiny sparrow suddenly landed on its roof before disappearing inside. I couldn't help smiling. Home. Even birds seemed to understand the importance of finding one. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Ethan, still wearing pajama pants, his hair sticking up in every possible direction. He rubbed his eyes before standing quietly beside me. They moved in. What? He pointed toward the birdhouse. The birds. Sure enough, another tiny sparrow flew inside, carrying pieces of grass. They're building a nest. We stood there silently watching them for several minutes. Then Ethan asked something completely unexpected. Dad? Yeah? Were you happy before? I looked at him. What do you mean? When you traveled all the time? It was a fair question. One I wasn't sure I'd ever honestly answered. I thought I was. You thought? I nodded. I confused being successful with being happy. He looked toward the birdhouse again. What's the difference? I smiled. Success is something other people usually notice. Happiness? Happiness is what you feel after everyone else has gone home. He thought about that for a long time. Then he quietly nodded. I think I understand. I wasn't sure he did. The truth was, I wasn't sure I completely understood either. Some lessons take a lifetime to learn. Later that afternoon, our doorbell rang. Standing on the porch was my former manager, David. He looked almost embarrassed. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. He stepped inside before looking around the house. The laughter coming from the backyard immediately caught his attention. What are they doing? Lily convinced Ethan to help build a tiny picnic table for squirrels. He laughed. Seriously? Apparently squirrels deserve furniture now. We both laughed. Then he grew quiet. You look different. I do? He nodded. You used to always look tired. I hadn't realized that. I guess I probably was. He smiled. I took your advice. What advice? I stopped missing my daughter's piano recitals. I smiled immediately. How was it? For several seconds, he simply stood there grinning. I cried. We both laughed. She played terribly. What? She missed half the notes. He shook his head while smiling. It was the greatest concert I've ever attended. Exactly. Perfection has never been the point. Presence is. Before leaving, David reached into his briefcase. I almost forgot. He handed me a small envelope. What is this? Your final retirement paperwork. I opened it casually. Inside was a handwritten note. It wasn't from the company. It was from him. Is greater than. Thank you for reminding me that some careers can be rebuilt. Is greater than childhood cannot. I quietly folded the paper before slipping it back into the envelope. I didn't do anything. He smiled. You came home. Sometimes. That's everything. That evening, while cleaning the garage, I found my old business suitcase waiting exactly where I'd left it months earlier. I picked it up. It felt strangely light now. Not because it weighed less. Because it no longer carried my future. Without thinking twice, I carried it to the curb for the neighborhood donation pickup. As I turned back toward the house, Ethan opened the front door. You finally got rid of it. I did. He smiled. I think Mom will be happy. What about you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he simply walked over and hugged me. Then, quietly enough that only I could hear, he whispered, I'm glad you came home. Those 5 words somehow meant more than every business achievement I'd spent 15 years chasing. Because this time, I knew I wasn't leaving. Nearly 1 year has passed since the night I came home from that business trip. Sometimes I still walk downstairs before going to bed. Not because I expect to find Ethan doing laundry anymore. Habite, I suppose. Old fears don't disappear overnight. They slowly fade every time life gives us a new memory to replace the old one. Tonight, the laundry room is quiet. The washing machine is empty. The baskets are neatly stacked against the wall. Exactly the way they should be. As I turn off the light, I catch myself smiling. This room once represented everything I had missed. Now, it reminds me of everything we found again. Last weekend, our family celebrated Ethan's 13th birthday. Nothing extravagant. Just grandparents. A backyard barbecue. Too much cake. Too many balloons. Exactly the kind of birthday I used to promise I'd attend. This time, I actually did. After everyone finished eating, Ethan asked if he could give a short speech. The backyard immediately grew quiet. He stood there holding a folded piece of paper. Then, after looking around at everyone, he smiled. I wrote something. My daughter clapped first. Emily smiled proudly. I leaned back in my chair, expecting one of those funny thank you speeches children usually give. Instead, Ethan unfolded the paper and looked directly at me. When Dad used to travel, he paused. I thought being a man meant doing everything by yourself. My heart immediately tightened. I thought protecting people meant never asking for help. He smiled softly. I was wrong. The backyard became completely silent. My dad taught me something this year. He looked directly into my eyes. The strongest people aren't the ones who carry everything alone. They're the ones who stay. No one spoke. Not even the children. I used to think my favorite memory would always be learning how to ride my bike. He laughed. It isn't anymore. My favorite memory is hearing Dad say. He smiled. I'm not leaving. I couldn't stop the tears this time. I didn't even try. After everyone applauded, Ethan walked over and hugged me. You okay? He whispered. I laughed through my tears. I've never been better. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the house had finally become quiet again, I found myself sitting alone on the back porch. The same porch where I had once questioned every decision I'd ever made. The birdhouse still hung from the old maple tree. This spring, another family of sparrows had moved in. Life has a beautiful way of reminding us that home is never built in a single day. It is built slowly, one ordinary moment after another. A few minutes later, Emily stepped outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me before quietly sitting beside me. "You've been thinking." "I have." "What about?" I smiled. "I've spent almost a year trying to figure out when everything changed. And I think I finally figured it out." "When?" "The night I found Ethan doing laundry." She looked surprised. "Really?" I nodded. I thought that night was the worst moment of my life. But it wasn't. It was the moment God finally opened my eyes. For years, I believed success meant giving my family everything they needed. I had been wrong. My family never asked me to give them everything. They simply wanted me to be there while we figured life out together. Money helped. The house mattered. The bills had to be paid. But none of those things ever hugged my children. None of them ever tucked them into bed. None of them ever taught my son how to become a man. Only I could do that. And for far too long, I had been somewhere else. Emily quietly rested her head against my shoulder. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we both got our husband back." I laughed. "And I think I finally became the father my kids deserved." The truth is, I returned home that night believing I was the one taking care of my family. Instead, I discovered a little boy who had quietly been trying to take care of all of us. He thought he was protecting us. What he really did was save me. He saved me from spending the rest of my life chasing promotions while missing the people I loved most. He saved me from confusing success with significance. Most importantly, he reminded me that the greatest investment any parent can ever make isn't in a retirement account. It's in being present. So if you're watching this while working late, while planning one more business trip, while telling yourself you'll spend more time with your family next month, please don't wait as long as I did. Children grow quietly, one ordinary day at a time. And one day, you'll suddenly realize they're no longer waiting for you to come home. I was one of the lucky ones. I came home just in time.